Long ago, in the time before time, a young princess was imprisoned in a tower by her cruel and unjust father. This was during a time where magic was plentiful, bestowed upon the people by the gods. And Salem, despite having this power, was unable to go out into the world and use it. However, her worries would soon come to an end, as a young knight named Ozma had come to rescue the princess. Not seeking her hand or honor, he simply sought out to do what was right. And as he made his way through the tower, he eventually would rescue the young princess. And they would go out into the world, with Salem choosing to stay by Ozma's side, having wanted to go out into the world with him, and Ozma with her, deciding that fighting for someone else was just as good as fighting for what is right. However, Ozma was soon stricken down by a fatal disease. Despite the fact that such a great hero could fight through monster and mayhem alike, he still was not immune to death. And so Ozma came to an end. But Salem would not have it. She would go to the brothers, the gods of life and death. First, she would attempt to speak with the god of light, life, and creation. She would travel to the spring of life and would beg the god of light to return her beloved. The god of life rebuked this request as it was too much. It would disrupt the balance of the world to interfere in the nature of life and death. Salem would not have it and would demand that the god of light would return Ozma to her. He simply would banish her, hoping that one day she would understand the gentle balance between life and death. However, Salem would have none of this, and in turn would turn to the god of darkness, death, and destruction, not telling him of meeting with his brother first. She would beg the god of death for the return of her beloved. A bit of an aside, I love the way the god of darkness moves in this contorted, strange, surreal kind of manner. They did an excellent job animating his movements because the level of fluidity of it, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. He emerges from the pool of Grim, the pool of darkness and death. And as Salem begs him to return her beloved, he would choose to do so for one of his devout followers. And as Salem would be overjoyed to have Ozma back with her, the god of light would have none of this. To have the god of darkness sully their agreement to honor the rules of life and death. He was angry at his brother for doing such a sacrilegious act. However, the brother simply stated that doing so for one of his followers was not wrong. It was not without his nature to just do something for another. He found anger in the god of light coming to his dominion and making demands of him. The god of light would have none of his brothers quarreling and would choose to destroy Ozma yet again to rebalance the scales. The god of darkness found this to be an insult, bringing Ozma back seeing it as a challenge from his brother. However, as the two brothers, the two dragons, would find themselves about to clash, the god of life would direct his brother to the fact that the young woman Salem had actually come to the god of light and gone to him second. She was not a devout follower or even a worshiper. She was just a selfish woman. The god of darkness begged his brother's forgiveness and would redo his mistake, destroying Ozma, this time for good. Salem, enraged, challenged the very gods themselves, only for the god of light to take her and submerge her in his fountain of life. The two brothers decided that Salem would be punished for her transgressions and decided that they would give her an immortal body to forever walk the earth for as long as it existed. She would know no death, no reuniting with her beloved Ozma. She would only know life and the continued value of death. And so Salem was cast out to forever wander the world. No matter what she tried or what she did, she would continue to live on. Until one day, Salem came down to a very dangerous idea, that the gods were not infallible. She was able to cause them to bicker and mule like any other man. And it was on that day that Salem learned that the hearts of men were easily manipulated. She would go to various kingdoms, showing them proof of her inability to die, raising up their armies to gain the same immortality that she had also gained. And as the forces of men would lay siege to the gods, they would demand to know who amongst them would actually will them into going after the gods. And so Salem stepped forward, showing that she had learned nothing from the gift that they had given her. And as the forces of men would attack the two brothers, the god of darkness would find insult in the fact that they would attack him with the very gift that he had bestowed upon them. And with that, he would wipe the whole of humanity from the face of the earth. Angered, Salem said she would simply raise a new army from the remnants of humanity, with the god of death simply telling her that she was all that was left of humanity at this time. There was nothing more. The god of light had taken a bit of anger or sadness towards this chain of events, as this world was meant to be a grand experiment, and it had gone horribly wrong, with the two brothers choosing to leave this world, never to return. However, the god of darkness found anger in Salem's begging for her not to leave. Not begging, no, demanding, showing that she had learned nothing from this experience. And as the god of darkness departed, he ended up destroying the moon, raining down destruction upon this already barren world. However, Salem, in her grief, her anger, her hatred, and her rage, in the darkness of the shadow of what was left of the world, she would come to the dominion of the Lord of Darkness, to submerge herself within the murky pool of Grim, hoping that it would come to end her. This was not to be the case, as Salem would emerge a changed being, one of perpetual life who sought nothing but destruction. Ozma, however, was not quite out of the picture just yet, as he had been revived in the world of the in-between by the god of light. The god of light had wanted humanity to undertake certain values, that of creation, of destruction, of knowledge, and of choice. And with these four artifacts, he would spread it amongst the destroyed world, in the hopes that one day, with their reassembling, the gods would return to the world to hopefully see a world that had learned its lesson, the value of cooperation, togetherness, and peace. And he would task Ozma to constantly be reincarnated in this new world to lead it into an age of prosperity. Ozma, however, simply wanted to return to the afterlife to be with his beloved Salem. The god of light told him that Salem yet lived in the world. However, she was desperately changed. Ozma immediately agreed in the hopes of being reunited with Salem. I also love this little micro expression from this faceless godlike being where he shows a bit of skepticism in his quick agreement to the whole situation. However, he brings Ozma back as a farmer, fighting off the waves of grim in the world and helping out his fellow man. Using his previous fighting prowess, he saves the various populace. However, he was put into a body in which he would never be alone, a body that would grow with him and learn just as much as he would. Oscar has a bit of an aside, having known the feeling of not knowing that you were destined just to kind of, in a way, be a meat puppet, just a vessel for someone else. Ozma was shocked to see the world as it was now, so desolate, destroyed, disheveled, seeing the new creatures called the faunus out in the world, and how they were treated as less than human, and how, in this world, no longer gifted by the gods, the populace of humanity had to find other ways in order to use magic. He also heard tale of a witch of the woods, a kind of Baba Yaga, who had lived her life in isolation. This witch was Salem. Immediately recognizing each other, Salem and Ozma were glad to have found one another, with Salem recounting to Ozma that this world has changed because it is no longer the world that they knew. Salem hid what had happened between her and the gods, not wanting Ozma to reject her, while Ozma hid his mission from the gods, not truly knowing where Salem's intentions lied. As Salem convinced Ozma to hopefully lead this world in a different direction, she showed off that she was still as manipulative as she had ever been. Ozma and Salem would come to rule this world and their own kingdom, starting a family and becoming the gods of this new world. However, Salem looked upon the worlds of men with disdain and hatred, reveling in their destruction. Ozma, however, was unhappy with this, having known he should be leading the world to prosperity, not ruling over them and culling out the weak. The mind of the person whose body he shared spoke out about this. Having known about Ozma's mission, he states that this was not what they were asked to do. Ozma starts to rebuke Salem's intentions, knowing that this was not right. However, the discussion was tabled as their daughter had actually discovered the ability to wield the powers of magic. And though this should have been a joyous occasion, Ozma decided to tell Salem the whole story, with Salem simply stating that it didn't matter anymore, that this world was theirs to shape as they saw fit, to destroy, to create whatever they wished. Ozma, having seen no longer the woman that he loved in Salem, would take his children to try to escape, only to be set upon by Salem. And in a vicious duel, a disastrous, calamitous battle, their castle, their kingdom would fall. And Ozma, broken and bloody, and the last thing that this life he would see would be Salem, bringing her heel, her fiery rage, upon the man that she had given so much up for. That Salem would go to these lengths and kill someone she had done so much for. It truly shows just how far she had fallen. Ozma would go on to live out his days, going through his cycle of life and death. Some lives he would live drinking away his sorrows. Others he would learn to continue his work for a better tomorrow. Even learning to live with his hosts, growing to love them and their families as much as anything else. However, no matter how many times he reincarnated, the influences of Salem still spread across the world, and he would be there to meet it at every turn. And so he got to work, creating new weaponry and technology in order to one day find the relics and stop Salem. And in one life, he would come to obtain the artifact of knowledge and ask of Jinn several questions, one of which was how to destroy Salem, with her response being something so terrible and awful, it would destroy Ozma for so long to come, that there was no way of destroying Salem, that she was unstoppable. And I think that is such an interesting way of going about this, because if Salem is unstoppable, then what do you do? How do you get everything settled? Not to mention something I didn't mention in this video, that once the 4 artifacts are brought back together, the gods will return, and depending on whether or not they see a harmonious world or one that's still splintered by segregation, hate, and violence, they will decide to either bestow their blessings upon the world or destroy it, destroying the whole of humanity. It's a very interesting way to go about things, and it really is a great kind of fable, a tale in and of itself, which is great because this entire series is built upon fables and tales, and to have one that's so interesting, although it does bring to, a bit of a question about the nature of the maidens, and, I'm pretty sure it was revealed that Ozpin was the one who bestowed upon them the powers of, spring, summer, winter, fall, and all that good stuff. But how was he able to do it? And is it simply because he had seen a little bit of his daughters in it? Or am I mistaken? It's been a while since I saw that, World of Remnant special. So it does make me wonder, but to have Salem go through all of this and ultimately decide to kill Ozma, despite everything that she had went through, it shows just how corrupted she had become. But at the same time, it's just like, Like, it's not just the fact that what she had been through, but it's the fact that she never quite learned her lesson. But I feel that that also came from the fact that she was locked away and she didn't really get out there in the world and come to understand things from a more rational perspective. And she had more life experience, maybe she would have made better choices. But that's something you could say about a lot of psychopaths. But Salem was selfish, and despite the fact that the gods took a lot more mercy on her than they should have in a lot of ways, she never learned her lesson. Ultimately, just playing it off on it from going just a desire to have her loved one back to just being spiteful against the gods and then being spiteful against the whole of humanity. She's so far removed from her original goal, and it's just spun so far out of control. And Jesus, the writing staff just did a phenomenal job on this kind of a backstory. It's so interesting and multi-layered. And ultimately, the fact that they, of all things, chose to have Ozma be the one to try to lead the world back into, prosperity. And ultimately, Ozma, despite being this very noble soul from the start, he, kind of did away with his vow in order to be with Salem. It took a while before he actually could see that Salem, wasn't the person that he had thought, despite the fact that the God of Light had warned him. She is no longer the Salem that you knew, and if where you go to find comfort, I forget what he says, but it was something like, you won't find comfort where you go to seek it, or something like that. And that was true. Salem had just gone through so much that she just stopped being Salem. She became something else entirely. And that's so fascinating to me. Because even Ozma, despite, initially being such a righteous soul, he keeps hiding these things because he just doesn't know how people will react. He's being tested in, in a way in and of itself. Can, like, a good person still remain when he's been through so much, when he's gone through so many trials and tribulations, because he's lived so many lives that have just been, pretty awful. He's seen so many people he'd cared for die over time. And what does Team Rwby think of this? Will they ultimately still side with Ozpin? Or will they no longer want to be associated with him because of his connection with Salem? Or, what will happen? And what happens now that we know that ultimately Salem cannot be destroyed? There is no way to take down Salem and rid this world of the violence and malice that she just perpetuates. It's such an interesting way about going through this entire story, and I love that the staff is doing this. I continue to hope we can get back up to some great fight choreography, but the storytelling has just reached such a whole nother level. And I'm just sad Monty was unable to see this, because his work has come so far. And Monty would have just made it all the better. We've lost Monty Oum years ago, and recently we've lost Stan Lee. It just continues to be an unfortunate world when we lose such creative and influential minds, but their work lives on in various ways, and for that I am always thankful, because art always, lives on, and they live on through their art. And that should always be a point of remembrance. That's something we should all learn. That though people pass away, they're not forgotten. The times you spent with them or the ways they influence you still remain. And unfortunately, that's something that Salem never was able to learn. But tell me your thoughts in the comments section below. What did you think about this episode? How did it make you feel? Do you sympathize with Salem? Or do you not much care for the way she acted? And do you sympathize more with Ozpin now that you know the truth? And what do you think Team Rwby's reaction to all of this will be now that they've seen all of it? Tell me your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you liked what I had to say in this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike and tell me what I'm doing wrong, and subscribe for more episodes of Rwby. Thanks for joining me.